Both hardtails and full suspensions offer thrills, spills and the chance to cover terrain fast. But how important is rear suspension? Could even a budget full sus run rings around the most expensive hardtail?
Or can a hardtail with an unlimited budget beat a cheaper full sus?
I think any full suspension, even on the lower end of the pricing spectrum, can beat a hardtail.
But I think you can forego some rear suspension if you're spending your cash on some super high performance parts.
So we're going to find out which of us is right by pitting a boutique hardtail against a great value full suspension. Tom, tell us what bike you've chosen to represent hardtails which you think will beat a full sus.
Well, I think I've got possibly the most Gucci hardtail I have ever ridden. It's a Stanton Switch 9er TI. The whole build comes in at an incredible £8,000. It's insane. But that does mean that I've got a £2,000 titanium rugged hardtail fitted with carbon hoops. I've got a titanium handlebar, powerful brakes, big grippy tyres which are really going to help on the descents, and an EXT era fork which comes in about £1,400, which I think is about the same cost as your entire bike.
So this is the GT Zascar FS Sport representing the full suspensions. It's £1,300 and for that you get 130mm travel SR Suntour fork, 120mm travel frame with a 4-bar link and a Suntour air shock. You get 10 gears and most parts are aluminium as you'd expect at a bike of this price, but it's got some lovely pieces of kit like hydraulic disc brakes, it's got boost wheels, it's got 2.25 inch tyres which are quite narrow, so let's crack on with riding it. Done it, bro. Okay, so I'm dropping in following Tom, and yeah, this bike feels mint. The geometry is right there, which we'll talk about more in a minute. And yeah, I'm really enjoying a bike with full 29-inch wheels on a super fun track doing some mountain biking with my mate. So every time I go over a bump, I can feel the rear suspension working, giving me traction, and that's something that Tom doesn't have. Tom, how's your hardtail?
Well, it's definitely bumpy, but hey, that's what legs are made for. I've got a decent fork on the front that's really supple and supportive, and I tell you what, Will, my brakes and my tyres are spot on. How are yours doing?
Well, the brakes aren't the most powerful. I'm having to squeeze really hard with my fingers to make it do anything. The tyres are really fast rolling, which is great, but I am lacking a little bit of traction, I've got to say.
That's your disco ring come off, mate.
Oh, my disco ring's come off, mate. Oh no. Well, we should have discarded that at the bottom. Tom, what's your first impressions?
Oh, good shape, smooth front end. And like I say, if you just let the back end go, it's all right. Like, legs get a workout, but I love it. But what about you, Will? I mean, full sus. Fancy little bike, go on, how is it?
Well, we've both got cheesy grins on our face. Tom is loving the hardtail life, and I'm well impressed at this thing. Given the price, it is a proper sorted mountain bike. It's got proper suspension, which works. It's got hydraulic disc brakes, which work. The geometry is bang on, it's all there. Okay, it's carrying a bit of weight. The tyres are quite skinny, and the suspension isn't the best quality, but blimey, it's fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next track, so we better crack on. All right, we're gonna drop into something nice and steep now. So I'm on the hardtail, and I think here, the bike has got potential to really shine. I've got a nice and controlled fork. I know exactly what my back end's doing, and I've got beautiful brakes, so plenty of power. I don't know how Will's gonna find it on his bike. How are you getting on, Will?
Well, Tom's flying along. I'm definitely finding I'm reaching the limit of these tyres on the steep stuff. And my fingers are starting to get a bit achy on the brakes. The geometry's really looking after me, which is great. The suspension is wonderful because I've got just so much more rear end traction. I can see Tom's back end skipping around.
I'd say the one thing about hardtails, and as much as I love them, when it starts getting a bit rougher like this, the back wheel just can't dig into the ground quite so easily, and the braking performance is definitely compromised.
Yeah, mate. So that was the descending, and I don't know what you think, but I don't think there was a lot to choose between these two.
I think there's definitely really positive things about each of the bikes. You've got full sus, which, yeah, I'm a hardtail lover, but it does make a difference. At the same time, great forks, really good brakes and big chunky grippy tyres that really sort of take the sting out of the back and let you concentrate on your lines. How about yours? Go on, what was really good about it?
So I really like the geometry. I think it's really well sorted. So it's a 65-degree head angle, 473 reach, 450 chainstay.
450?
Yeah, long.
Long.
So these are all modern numbers. It's nice and stable. It's very predictable. So descending, it was great. Let's find out what they're like on the climbs.
I reckon I've got this one in the bag.
Wait for me!
There you are.
Here I am. So of course, that's the big disadvantage to this bike spec-wise, is there's no dropper and no quick release seat clamp.
The other thing, how heavy is it?
This bike is 17.1 kilos, which is pretty hefty. It's not much less than a lightweight e-bike. What about yours, Tom?
My bike comes in at 12.9 kilos, so it's not super light, but it's definitely built nice and burly to help me on the descents. The other thing that helps on the descents, of course, is the geometry. So I've got a 65.5-degree head angle, a reach of 483 millimeters, and super snappy 428mm chainstays at the back.
So I think my 450s are going to give me more stability on this climb. Let's find out.
How are you doing on the 1,300 quid bike then, Will?
Oh, well, it climbs well because it's got that long chainstay. It's ever so stable. I am, of course, aware of the quite high weight of the bike. These tyres, whilst they roll quite well, at 2.25 inch width, they're not providing the most traction, Tom. How's your bike going?
Yeah, not too bad. Like, it's definitely a bit bumpy, but I've got big, thick, chunky tyres with low pressures, and because they're decent pairs of tyres, I can run them at relatively low pressures. Also, my back end isn't bouncing around, sagging and wallowing in its travel, so it feels quite efficient.
Yeah, I've got no lockout on this rear shock, so I can definitely feel that rear suspension moving. It's generating grip for me, but I fear it's also sapping some energy.
I have to admit, it's quite nice riding a bike that doesn't weigh too much, up quite a steep hill.
Okay, so that's the climbing done, and I'm starting to love this Zascar FS. How are you feeling about yours?
Mate, I'm enjoying it loads, yeah. Beautiful shape, nice kit, feels great.
Well, you're selling me on it. Why don't I have a go on yours, and you try this one? What do you reckon?
I mean, this is definitely the better bike, but I'll give you a go on it.
Oh yeah, let's swap shoes too. Well, this feels very expensive, but there's definitely no rear suspension. Let's go.
Enjoy the bouncing round. Oh, I am on plush suspension.
I'll tell you what, it's lovely and light and ever so smooth. Like, you can feel the quality of the fork, you can feel you've got a bit more volume in the tyres, but oh, no rear suspension.
I tell you what though, the reactivity to pedal inputs is really good on a hardtail, but like you said, this actually pedals all right and it sticks to the ground nicely. I like it.
For the money, it is phenomenal. I love the lightweight of this thing. Absolute beast. The big tyres are good as well. The big tyres sort of give you a bit of leeway to play around.
Woo! Oh, I nearly lost it there with those slightly harder compound tyres. Oh, my chain's off! My chain's off!
His chain's off! The chain is being reattached.
There we go. That wasn't an F1 pit stop there.
It's just about to get good as well.
I tell you what, you can hold a bit of speed on a full size, can't you? It doesn't, your eyeballs aren't being bounced out of your head.
Oh yeah, this is definitely more bouncy, but it's forcing me to pump and pop and generate speed and not hit any square edges.
I'm definitely having to think a little bit less. It's a bit more point and shoot. My lines don't matter quite as much as Will's do.
I'll tell you what, the weight of this thing absolutely flies uphill.
Yeah, I can definitely feel those sort of urgent pedal strokes I'm putting in are making the suspension compress. So it's not the most efficient feeling bike, but the rear wheel really strikes the ground nicely, which does make a difference.
This fork may be more expensive than the entire GT Zascar, but oh my god, it's good.
I have to say, I think I like the more expensive, higher volume tyres on that Hardtail. I've got a bit more confidence when traction's a little bit off. Woo!
What a machine! God, the brakes are good.
Oh, that's so different, isn't it?
Oh, so different. So what's your gut reaction to the Zascar?
Gut reaction, the tyres are really holding me back on that. So that's got on the front a Maxxis Minion in a 2.5 inch width with the Exo Plus casing, so it's super stable, loads of grip. Now the Trail Boss is a fine tyre, but on the front, that narrow width and the harder compound, you know when we're sort of doing the sort of swoopy bits with the corners and it's rocking a bit damp, front end tung, tung, tung. And I'm like, whoa! Whew, how about you though? What about the old Hardtail?
Well, it sounds a little bit terrifying to do that sketchy off-camber stuff with loose rocks on a hardtail, but actually it was fine. I felt it in my back and I felt it in my knees because I was having to use my legs as suspension, but grip-wise and tyre-wise, the tyres are amazing and the fork is absolutely uncanny. Like the way that it just finds traction, you can't feel it working. Flipping impressive machine.
Yeah, you gotta, I think on a hardtail, you've got to trust the front end and let the back end do its thing while your legs just take the hits and deal with it.
I think you saw me have a few of those moments.
I think I did, one or two. I certainly had a few of my own though. Boy, that was exhilarating.
Last run. Dynamic geometry. So as the hardtail suspension compresses, the bike gets steeper because there's no rear suspension to compress at the same rate. So in terms of dynamic geometry, a hardtail changes a lot throughout the travel in a way that a full suspension doesn't. Just a small little point there.
When it gets a bit rougher, the rear suspension does help keep that rear wheel in contact with the ground, which means braking's better and you get a smoother ride, which means you can concentrate a little bit better on what's coming up, including some slightly slippy corners.
Here he is.
I lost my chain.
Oh, again.
Well, half lost my chain.
Mate, nice one. Tom, how was the high-end hardtail?
Mate, I had an amazing time riding it, and here are 3 things that I learned riding this high-end hardtail. First up, look for a bike that's got a long front end and a slack head angle, as that'll give you loads of stability when you're rattling down fast tracks. Next up, get a big tyre with as strong a sidewall as possible to give you as much confidence as possible when you're hitting those rocky and rooty lines. Finally, if you've got a bit of cash to spend it on the fork. Get something that's nice and supple at the early part of its stroke for all the comfort you can muster, and then give it plenty of progression all the way through so it's controlled when you hit those bigger hits and stays propped up in the steeps. So what did you learn, Will?
Well, the GT Zascar FS Sport is a hell of a bike. Now for just 1,300 quid, you get seriously sorted geometry and some proper componentry. Okay, it is really heavy, the front tyre is a little scary and the suspension isn't the most sophisticated. But for that money, what more could you ask for? With just 2 choice upgrades, being a quick release seat post clamp and a larger volume, softer compound front tyre, you've got a heck of a mountain bike for under 1,400 quid. If you enjoyed this video, why not see if an enduro bike can keep up with a downhill bike by clicking the link here.